Hey, what's up, guys? Some of you have asked about the new MOPS SOPS system, and so it's a really cool node SOP pack, basically, kind of like the game dev tools. If you guys don't know what the game dev tools are for Houdini, I highly recommend you get that. I should probably kind of go over that too. And so if you're using some of the newer Houdini 16.5 builds, all you got to do is just go up here and under the little plus icon for your shelf, under shelves, look for a game development tool set. And when you click that, if you haven't installed it before, you'll have this option. There'll only be one option that says update tool set. And just click that. As long as you're running Houdini as an administrator and your install is pretty good with your environment variables and stuff, it'll just automatically install it. And the Houdini game dev tools is just a bunch of super useful tools. I highly recommend it. Again, as just a quick example of some of the stuff that you could do, if you just type in file. One of the game dev tools is multi-file. So multi-file lets you load in multiple files instead of having to use just one. This lets you load in a whole bunch of them at the same time. The game dev tools just have tons and tons of stuff. There's just really great UV tools, remeshing tools. There's gravity-based scattering, and so that's a whole other thing. There's already a couple free videos on the Houdini website explaining how some of those tools work. But yeah, just install them, play around with them. I might go over some of the scattering tools in the future. It's really good. But the thing that everybody's talking about right now is MOPS. And so what are MOPS, if you're wondering? The guys over at Intagma recently released a set of nodes. So if we, now that we're inside this file node, if I just start typing mop, we'll get, actually let's make this go up so you can see the node list. If we start typing mops, we get this huge list of nodes, and I already have it installed. I'm going to cover how to install it if you guys are wondering, because it's kind of confusing. What they do, lots of awesome stuff. So if you're someone coming from Cinema 4D and you miss a lot of the MoGraph stuff, that's what all these nodes do. Houdini's always been able to do this stuff, but these nodes basically are custom HDAs, Houdini digital assets, that make that workflow way easier. So now you could just drop down a scatter node or an instancer node or a noise node or flocking or whatever, and it just works. And so it's really easy to use. It's really powerful stuff. And if you're coming from Maya and you've used the Mash kit, it's basically the same thing. It's like Mash for Houdini. And so highly recommend you guys get your hands on these. They're really powerful. Lots of really cool stuff you can make with them. And so the place to get them at is just Google Houdini MOPS or www.motionoperators.com. That's what MOPS are short for. So kind of like SOPs are surface operators, COPs are compositing operators, same thing. MOPS are for motion graphics stuff. And so it'll take you to this website. It'll explain to you a little bit about what MOPS does, who's behind it, a link to the GitHub. There's video tutorials, so if you click on the video tutorials, you'll get a couple really basic kind of introductions. This is great stuff, though. It'll show you what the nodes do and how to kind of combine them and stuff. There is an install process video. It kind of confused me a little bit, so I'll probably go over that. And they recently updated it. I don't think they've made a video for it yet, because a lot of people were requesting that Mops works with third-party render engines. And so while Mops is great, it was designed from the ground up to work with Mantra. And so, as we all know, if you're not using Mantra, you can't use the whole copy stamp workflow, because Mantra knows how to use it's instancing its own way. And so it recognizes that copies and all that stuff are instances, while if you try to do that in Redshift, we all know that it causes all these problems, and it slows down tremendously because it creates unique geometry. Same thing applies for Arnold. And so they recently, I think in the last week or two, maybe 2 weeks ago, they updated it to include a way of converting your Mops into a third-party renderable instance system. So now Redshift works with this beautifully. So if you click on their GitHub, you'll end up here. And so this is their GitHub page. You know, bookmark it or whatever. And you could see the last time that it's been updated. It looks like they updated 10 days ago. The Mop shelf, this is what I was talking about. So 11 days ago they added it. And this lets everything work with the third-party renders. So looks like they updated. They added a commit 3 days ago. So here's the installation instructions and stuff. And yeah, I probably should update myself. And so once you install it one time, it's a lot easier to just update. You just download it. So you just click on here, click download a zip. The zip will download, and eventually you just, well, actually let's download it. I might have it still downloaded actually. Let me see. Nope. I guess I'll download the new one. So hit download zip. It'll download really quickly, and so you'll get this file, Mops master zip. And so all we've got to do now is open that up. And of course, I'm only showing you guys how to do this in Windows. I assume it's something similar in I don't know, in Linux and stuff. Shouldn't be too different. And so what you end up with is the Mops master zip file. And so when you open this up, you'll have examples, icons, a bunch of random little files. You don't need to worry about any of this stuff right now. So all you got to do is, once you have the Maps master file, go look for your Houdini root install. So for me, that's under my Documents Houdini 16.5. And this is my root install, so this is where my environment variable is. Not the actual program installation folder, but this is like your root, what's the word? Like your root reference that whenever you start up Houdini, this is what it loads up. And so this is where all your Houdini digital assets are, your OTLs. So if you come in here, you know, I have my Redshift Melanin right here. And so actually I should copy this so I can give it to you guys. And I'll give it to you guys later. And so, but yeah, so this is the root folder. And in here, you'll notice I already have Mops master. So that's what that's the folder that's inside the zip. So all you got to do is just drag it and drop it in. So matter of fact, I'm going to just come in here, delete everything, and copy, paste, since this is the new version. And so now it's updated. That's all you got to do to update it. It's pretty straightforward. Just delete the old one and paste in the new one. And the reason why it's that easy is because what you need to do is you need to edit your environment variable. So we've got our Houdini environment. Obviously, I'm assuming that you guys have edited your Houdini environment variables before, just because you have to even use Redshift. So I'm going to right click it. I'm going to use Notepad++, which is, if you guys don't have it already, it's a better version of Notepad. It's better for coding and stuff like that. And it's free. And so here is our install. And actually, I should get rid of this since I don't have Arnold installed here. And as you can see in this list, we've got our Redshift bin, our location, our Houdini path to tell it which version to use. And I'm using 496, the latest stable build. Let's get rid of that too. Oops. I am using RenderMan, so I've got the RenderMan set up here, pointing to RenderMan 21.5. Probably should check for a new version. And here's the game development tool set. That's already this automatically right here gets added to your environment set once you just click the download and update. So you don't have to worry about this, but if you do manually do it, that's where it's at. And so after this, I created a new line called mops equals, and it points to the location of our mops master folder. And so if we click on that, move that to the side, our mops master is right here. So if we click up here, this address is the same. And so then our Houdini OTL scan path and our toolbar path, even though technically you could add it here in toolbar and OTLs, that would mean every time we wanted to update, we would have to come in here and update these also. So what we're doing is we're just telling Houdini, scan the OTL and toolbars like you normally would on a fresh install, but also check these extra ones. And so what this is doing is Houdini OTL scan path, it's going to check inside of the mops, because it's $mops, so it's checking in here first, and then it's checking OTLs. And so inside our mops master folder, we have an OTL section, and so it's going to come in here and check this. And then same thing with our toolbar. We have a toolbar folder inside of our mops master, and that's going to make our mop shelf. And so pretty much as long as you have these three environment variables set up, it should work right out of the box after you've installed it. And so just make sure for your, wherever you have your Houdini stuff pointing to, so see users, whatever, make sure you update it for yourself. And then that the mop $mops will point to that, and so then it'll figure the rest out automatically. Okay, cool. I should probably close Houdini to make sure that the new version updated. So let me close that up. Okay, Houdini's loaded back up. So yeah, step one, let's make sure it even worked. So let's drop down a file and hit mops, and yeah, we have all our mops nodes here. So it looks like it worked. Let's jump back out. Let's actually just delete that for now. And in our shelf, let's hit the plus sign, go to shelves, look for mops, and we'll add it. And so the mop shelf currently only has one icon, but this is really powerful, so we actually want this. So yeah, let's get to making something cool. So let's just so you guys can see how to convert your mop stuff into something Redshift can use, and also get the what's it called, the motion blur out of it. So step one, let's just drop a cube, and let's just dive right in. And so for something simple, we're not going to do anything crazy. Let's just type in instance, and we'll have the mops instancer. And so what the mops instancer lets you do, it's very similar to the mash instancer. And so it lets you copy multiple objects. So let's make something else. Let's make sphere. And let's shrink it down a little. Let's make what else? No. What are they called? Torus? No, let's just a platonic solid. Let's just it's a tetrahedron. So we've got these three objects: a box, a sphere, and a tetrahedron. And so what the mops instancer lets you do, let's actually flag this so there's nothing in there, is it lets you add objects. So right now we have 0. So let's add 3 objects, and we're going to just drag and drop. And so, as you can see, it populated our little setup. And there's different methods of instancing: random, ordered, point attributes. If you want to use your own point attributes, you can adjust the seed. This is really powerful stuff. Basically, this makes it way easier now to scatter stuff than before, doing it the old-fashioned hard way. And so this lets you do a lot of really cool things. And so you can adjust the distribution. Do you want it to be on a grid, linear, spherical, on a mesh, so you can select the mesh. And so we'll do spherical. And so if we zoom out, you can adjust the radius. You can scale the radii individually. You can increase the radius, as you can see. Actually, let's just do grid. And so with grid mode, we'll do, let's increase the grid 5 by 5, maybe more actually. It's 15 by 15. And what it does is it'll fill in, it'll actually fill in that grid size that you want, that you're creating. And so for our purposes, that's, I think, too much. And so you could, under each object, there's an options section. You can adjust several of the parameters for each object, like the probability. So let's say we only want the box to show up 0.25, which is 25% of the time. and maybe the sphere, or the sphere maybe only 10% of the time. And you could rotate it, just the scale, and so on. And so for our purposes, let's actually do oops. Oh. Uh-oh. Well, I probably shouldn't have moved the slider that way. No idea what it's doing. It's executing some sort of VOP and Vex code and likely crashed from the looks of it. Oh, okay, there we go. Thankfully it survived. Yeah, careful with that, guys. And so don't go negative. So what this lets you do is increase the steps, or the distance between them, so you can keep shrinking it down. And obviously if you go too small, it's going to be too heavy. So let's just, this looks cool. So you could see that our probability 0.25 and all that is accurate. You see the spheres are the least to appear because they're 10%. The tetrahedrons are the most likely to appear because they're a 1, and then the boxes are 25% likely to appear. So cool. So this saves us a lot of effort from our instancing tutorial where we had to build these attributes ourselves. But again, I still highly recommend people learn how to do that so they understand what's happening. And so what this node is doing actually is what we did in our instancing tutorial actually. So if you middle mouse click this, we have mops index, and this attribute, if we go to our geometry spreadsheet, mops index, as you'll see, is doing the same thing as we did that one time, where every object is 0 or 1 or 2. And so these objects are being assigned, all the cubes are 0, all the spheres are 1, all the tetrahedrons are 2, and so then each point is randomly being assigned. So it's doing the same thing we did in our instancing tutorial, except obviously this just makes it a lot easier because it's one node, easy to set up. And okay, cool. So now we've got our instances. Let's do something with them. So let's actually right click and type in rand, and you get a mops randomize. And so what the mops randomize node lets you do, let's click that. So it lets you do some randomization tasks. So you can randomize the position a little. You can randomize the orientation, which is really useful again for scattering environments. So let's say we leave this at 0 and 0. 0 and 0. Now we're only scattering on the y-axis, so they're rotating. We can randomize the scale on directions or uniform. We'll just use uniform scaling. And for a minimum, let's do 0.1, or maybe that's too small, 0.3. And so as you can see, really quickly, we've got some good randomization. Randomized objects, randomized scale, randomized rotations with just 2 nodes. You know, this is a lot more user friendly. And so as much as I love Houdini, some stuff, this is what we need more of now. I hope that Houdini 17 does more of this type of stuff where we get some very useful Houdini digital assets that make these type of repetitive tasks just easy. So we don't have to build them ourselves. Like I honestly think that the game dev kit tool should just be built in now, which is kind of why they made it updatable. Mops, in my opinion, are awesome. They should just the side effects should just add them. They should just be official now, and just keep updating them and making them better. And so cool. So now we've randomized our objects. So now what can we do? What else can we do? Our next step is maybe let's add some movement or something. So mops includes a lot of kind of motion graphics kind of stuff. So there's explode, which breaks apart your geometry. There's noise-based fall-offs. There's a spring modifier. There's just a lot of stuff out there that you could pick. I haven't experimented with all of them because there's quite a few, and I just haven't bothered to use them all. But like I said, the documentation's on their website, so you guys can kind of play around with it and see what happens. A pretty simply used one is the object fall off. So there's several fall off methods. Or there's like the noise fall off. Let's just try the noise fall off. And so let's see if it does anything. Nope. Blend mode set. Strength, perlin noise. Let's see here. Transform. Let's try 0.1. Let's just keep our time to 1, and our noise will make things scale. Let's see. Let's try that. Maybe do that. Now let's keep our amplitude up. There's different noise types. This looks kind of cool. Let's rotate the noise around. Okay, so now we've got a noise fall off generated. And so let's do something with this fall off. Combine fall offs, color modifier, audio fall off, explode, fall off locking index from attribute, instance or mesh. Move along mesh. Mops randomize, relax modifier. Reorient, shape, spring modifier. Let's see if we can get a transform going and just see what happens based on this fall off that we've got here. So maybe we'll, as you can see, as I adjust this, based on the fall off, it's going to do some stuff. So let's maybe not rotate all of the parameters. Maybe we'll rotate just this. $180. Maybe we'll move it up and down or something. And so that, based on our noise fall off, different things are moving differently. Right now, this is not animated, I don't think. So let's turn on time varying noise and see what we get. Yeah, there we go. So now the noise is moving based on our time on our scene. So now we've got, you know, some jumping stuff. And so another cool node we can drop in here now is mops spring. And this will give things a little like springy bounciness. And so you can control the how much the bounce gets dampened, or the mass of the objects. Let's actually zoom out, because I don't know how high things are going to move. That's actually way too much. But let's actually dampen the objects so they don't move as much. Let's try 0.2, I think. Let's see what happens. Yeah, so now they're moving a little slower. And actually, let's turn on real-time movement. And as you can see, our objects are moving around, doing stuff. And so, yeah, it's really cool. Let's maybe increase the dampening just a pinch so we get a little more movement. And just like that, with only a couple nodes, we got some really cool stuff. You know, this would have taken a lot more work before. And now we've got some animation, randomized objects, using a random noise to guide the transform. And we could actually transform multiple directions, so let's just go all the way and just really transform all over the place. So we got all these little dancing shapes. Neat. Let's just keep it like this for now. And cool. So now the question is, how do I render this with Redshift? Because the problem pretty much is, right now these are packed primitives and they're instanced using copy sop methods that only Mantra really likes. So thankfully, after a couple people started requesting the devs of mops to include a feature to convert these, they added a conversion utility. And so this conversion utility basically saves you all the trouble of the headache of having to convert this into a, so if we jump back out, convert this into an instance object and all that stuff. This just makes it easier. So what you do is you select your mops object, And under the mops tab, we have this new little utility, and so it's mops to point instances. And so you click this, and basically, if any of you guys have ever used Mash, it's kind of like the Mash repro to instancer utility. It converts. So you hit this, and now it creates these two new objects. And so it hides your original. And so now we've got this, which is our instances group. And if you come in here, it does all the conversion for you. It grabs all the objects, does everything. And so we have all these points in here now, scattered in the same exact spot, and it's pulling in the attributes. So it's using a mops extract attributes, and you'll see the attributes it's extracting. And originally, I was going to show you guys how to do this manually, but last week they decided to make this, which makes everything way easier. So I don't have to show you guys this part anymore. And so it's all automatic, which is great. And so then they added an attribute wrangle, which chooses the objects. And so the objects that you have here are in here now. So under mops instances, if you dive in here, and we've got all these sub-network nodes, you could just, well, you can't delete them, but just get them out of the way. And so now we've got our sphere, our platonic, and our box. So what's cool is now we could actually add materials to each of these like we would any other Redshift object. And so let's just, for example's sake, let's just type in material, and let's just make duplicates. And we'll just use presets. We'll make this glass, we'll make this plastic, and we'll make this blue, and we'll make this plastic, and we'll make this reddish. Okay, cool. So now we've got 3 materials. Let's go back out to our object level. Let's dive in here, and let's just assign the materials. So go into here, material 1, and as you can see, it's already doing its thing. Material 2, and material 3. Alright, neat. And they're hidden, obviously, because you don't want them to be visible. And on our instance object, we'll go up to the Redshift tab, and we'll add the Redshift object parameters, just to make sure it reads it in as instances correctly and stuff. It's just a good habit to do. And let's make a Redshift ROP. So now we've got our Redshift ROP in here. And let's just activate GI. We'll just use brute force. And under output, we'll just turn on optics just so we can get faster feedback during look dev. Cool. And the only thing left to do is actually, let's make a sun. So hold control, find an angle we think will look good, like right here. Let's hit holding control, RS light sun. That's good enough for me. Let's make a plane. Let's just scale it up a bit. And let's move it down just a pinch, since some of the objects might go down. And so we can get some cool shadows. And for this, let's make a new matte, actually. material, and we'll just use the default, and we'll make this kind of rough, GGX, kind of rough, GGX, GGX. Cool. And we've got our light already ready. So everything should be working. And all we got to do now is try and render this out and see what happens. So let's open up the... Let's actually save this. I'll save this so you guys can check it out. Patreon. Mops. Bonus. Tutorial. Scene 01. Okay. And let's open up the render view and see what happens. And obviously our camera's way down there, so let's zoom out a bit. And cool. It's lightning fast because it's using instances correctly, not packed primitives. And let's actually select our camera and add a camera properties to it. Let's turn on photographic exposure. Let's do 0.8 overexposure. Let desaturate 0.25. Let's oversaturate the image a bit. Let's increase the f-stop. I mean, let's try 9, 10. Yeah, that looks a little better. $11 should be good. Cool. And so now we've got our objects doing their thing. And actually they're missing normals. So that's why they kind of look weird. So let's actually dive in here. Add normals for our objects. What's neat is you can actually come in here and edit the object further, and it's just going to work and it's going to just replace the point, the object, whatever the points are, because all it's doing is using points to scatter these objects on. So you could edit the object further, and or replace the object completely if you want, which is great. And so now we're getting some nicer normals here. Cool. Okay, now our shapes are sharp and look a lot nicer. And actually our cubes, can't really see them, so let's change the ground color, make that really dark so you can see things better. Okay, that looks better. And so now, as you can see quickly, we've got some nice scattered stuff going. Great. Now the question is, a lot of people are going to have is, why is there no motion blur? And that's a valid question. The objects are animated, so there should be motion blur, right? And the reason is because it's using points now to control, to figure out the velocity basically from point locations. And so you need to activate that in your ROP. And so right now, if we just turn on motion blur by itself, there's no motion blur. And so in order for motion blur to work correctly, you also need to activate the enable point level blur. And so let's actually make this a little bigger because the resolution is really low. So activate fixed scaling. Let's just do 250 so it's nice and big. And so right now there's no motion blur. And if we activate point level blur and we hit reload, there is motion blur now. You can see it right here, but it's really weak. So to increase the to make it look better and increase the duration of motion blur, you can adjust the frame duration when the shutter starts or ends, and the efficiency. I like to decrease the efficiency so it's not as perfect. And the frame duration, something like this. Let's just try 5 and see what happens. And hit reload, and boom, you'll notice that our objects have motion blur that are moving around. Neat. And of course we can increase this further. Let's do 10 frames. Reload. Now we've got some really heavy motion blur. And yeah, this is exactly what optics is for. A lot of people are trying to use a denoiser with like no samples and expect it to somehow magically make their render better. That's not what it's for. It's for getting that last 5% of your render clean, or for heavy, difficult to render stuff like motion blur and depth of field, which is great for during the look dev phase so you don't get a noisy image. So if we disable optics by clicking that, well, it rendered pretty quick, but let's actually just reload so you can see the difference. It's pretty noisy. And then optics just helps clear it up faster. But yeah, so cool. Now you guys hopefully know how to install mops, how to use, basic little setup, how to convert your objects to something Redshift can use, how to go in there and assign materials to your objects, how to go in there and continue editing them if you want, and also how to activate motion blur at the point level to take advantage of mops. And as you can see, this is just, it's blazing fast to render since it's using actual instances. So the speed is just unreal. And so imagine you could use this with, whatever objects you want, heavier assets, and you'll be good to go. Or Redshift proxies even, and it'll just work. So yeah, thanks again, guys, for supporting my Patreon. Hopefully you guys learned something cool. I expect a lot of people are going to be having a lot of fun with mops and making really cool, interesting things. And now that Redshift works really easily with it, you don't have to go through all the trouble of for making instances in Houdini like we used to before. So this is a game changer. But yeah, thanks again for supporting my Patreon. Hope you guys enjoyed the tutorials. Look forward to making another tutorial and seeing any cool stuff you guys make. Thanks.